Hello, welcome. Oh, I have to check the volume. I always forget to do that. Okay, yeah, volume's good. Welcome. Let's see if anybody's here. This was kind of a last minute thing. We had talked about last night and then about doing the book club. So I don't know if anybody's going to be here or not. And I guess we'll see. So the book club hey, there's a few people on. Mary, Joy, Elise, Limitless, Pounzer are here. So we talked about doing the book club for December for doing Psychopath free, if anybody's up for that. Katrina says, oh my goodness, I just got home from work and totally forgot, and yay for notifications. What an awesome surprise. Hey, Lucy's here. Hi, Lucy. David, Mark, Mateus, Diana. Hello, 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 everybody. Mary says she didn't know anything about this book club, but started reading the book today and she's on chapter 5. Yeah, it's a great book. It's one of those books that it's really hard to put it down because so much of it's like uncanny. You're just reading your own life, really. So, hey, Ryan's here. Hello. Anthony, hello again. Van, Evie, hey. So I will be putting a calendar on my website like this weekend. So that's going to have, I need to think about what all is going to go on it, but at a minimum, it'll be the live streams and the book club night. So people can plan for it. So it's not so like impromptu like this. And then anything else that's going on. So how is everybody doing? Have you guys read the book? And if you have, I would be curious. And also before I get into this, Lucy, I would like, because I know Lucy was super big into wanting the book club, as was I. And I have never led a book club before. I've never even been a part of a book club before. So this is all very new for me. And I've, trial and error like everything else. And she had mentioned, people before, like in the book club for November, people had mentioned doing something that was more structured. So I'm totally all for that. I really need to spend some time thinking about like what that would look like and like what that would mean for these book club meetings. So let's get together and figure this out and move forward. We'll do it January 2017. It's totally new year, new everything. So Mateus says, I've heard about the book club, but I don't remember the book. Yeah, it's very, so it's kind of chaotic. Like, I'm not even gonna like pretend that it's not. So there's a book club book that's actually for January that we're reading, and I forget the name of it right now, which is a different book than this book club thing. It's chaos. It's just chaos. It's just chaos. We're just going to go with it. We're just going to go with it, and we're going to keep improving as we move forward. So I hadn't, like, all of this started, I hadn't even, the thought of doing a video book club, like, never even crossed my mind. And then somebody had mentioned it when we were about, I think, like 8 or 9 months into the regular book club. And I thought that would be a really cool idea. So we jumped into that, but we've already read 8 or 9 books, but a lot of them are like really, I think, really important books to cover. So it's like I'm trying to backtrack and then keep moving forward at the same time. So it's just kind of this weird thing that's going on here. Let's see. The book for January is, let me look in my Amazon. I know, I will tell you in just a second. I'm totally drawing a blank on the book. Cha-cha-cha. Where is it? Manage your content and devices. Okay. Here we go. And why is it not letting me in? There it goes. Let's see. Lucy, do you remember offhand like what the book is? I think it was the one that you had recommended. She has yes, a very cool name that I cannot pronounce. I think this was the book, The Becoming the Narcissist's Nightmare. Let me switch back over to my chat. Okay, yeah, Lucy doesn't remember. I might not have even posted it anywhere. Oh my gosh, if that's the case, then I really need a calendar. So, all right. So the book for January that I apparently still need to post is called Becoming the Narcissist's Nightmare: How to Devalue and Discard the Narcissist While Supplying Yourself. And it's by Shahida Arabi. Wait, yes. And then the book after that is How to Do No Contact Like a Boss, which I love that title, by Kim Saeed, Saeed. I will, like I said, I'm going to get a calendar up on my website this weekend, and then I will post all that. So, oh, she is. Wise Tech says she's on YouTube too. I did not know that. I seriously need to expand my YouTube horizons. Like, they are very small. Ridiculous. That's cool. I'll have to reach out to her. So, okay. But yeah, I'll get the calendar up, making a note to myself. It's shaking because I'm writing on the table. Sorry. For book club books. All right. Mary, oh wait. Oh yeah, Katrina says, what is your email, Dana? It's Dear Dana at thriveafterabuse.com. So, Wise Tech says, Meredith Miller mentioned you, Dana, a few times. That's really cool. I hope it was good. Like, now I'm nervous, but that's always, that's cool. That's cool that other people, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird how big the internet is, and it's weird how small it is all at the same time. So, let's see. I just switched out. So I did the live stream last night. I'm just going to chat for a little bit while people are still kind of like checking their notifications and joining the group. I did the live stream last night standing up, and oh my gosh, what a huge difference. So I will be doing that from here on out. I bought this standing desk off of Craigslist like 6 months ago. It was like $100. It was a steal. And I I hadn't used it because I thought I was going to sit down and film, and I don't even know. Like, it's so obvious now. Like, I should have just been filming standing up, but it really makes a huge difference, like with my energy and my back, and amazing, amazing. So it makes me kind of really want to work standing up all the time and see how that works. People have talked about doing that, and I don't know, it just sounded really uncomfortable. But after standing last night for 3 hours, or actually like 3.5 hours, I was totally fine. So, uh, oh, that's really cool. I did not know that. Diana says, yeah, Richard Grannon and Mark Smith mention you as well. They love your work and knowledge. That really means a lot to me. Yeah, there's so many different speakers on YouTube about all of this, and it's just so cool how everybody has a different approach, everybody has different information, and it can really be so great to hear just their perspective and their approach at things, and just it helps to just piece everything together when you have so many different people from so many different walks of life from all over the world sharing their experiences. It really helps everything to come together. So Lucy had asked, are you going to go through your notes tonight? I was going to touch on that. So at a minimum, like go through my notes. Yes. Lucy says, I would love to see a symposium of all of you together. I would be open to that. I think that the challenge is, I know for Richard, he's in the UK, so, travel expenses and time and, all of that would be quite the challenge. Although I would be totally open to challenging. I'm not going to be challenging Richard. He is one fit dude, and I would lose. So that won't be happening. But I would be open to traveling, is what I was going to say. Traveling to like the UK, or it would be a great excuse. I've always wanted to go to Ireland and Australia. I'm just saying. So if we could figure out how to make that happen. Lucy says, maybe we need to start a fundraiser. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah, he's travel. That's right. Yeah, Lucy says Melanie Tanya Evans is in Australia. That's right. I forget that. So, yeah, we'll have to coordinate and see. I don't talk. I really don't talk to any like other YouTubers or people that are involved in this topic. It's just kind of me. I guess it's more like I just haven't thought to. I haven't really thought to. I don't know. I don't. So I kind of. I don't. Maybe they all talk to each other. I don't know. I kind of don't think that they do, but I could be way off on that. So let me just real quick here. So David says, how come if I feel like if I killed myself, then I could show her what she did to me? That. Oh, it scares me so much when people talk that dark. And I get it. I get it. I get it. But first of all, let's just look at this logically. Well, she's not going to get it because they're not emotionally available to be emotionally attached to people to actually get it. And even if she did get it, then you wouldn't be around to even see that she got it. So to me, it seems like a waste of your life for no good reason. I would encourage you, first off, that anybody out there, to take the thought of suicide off the table. Like, just take that off the table, because it doesn't stop the pain. It just gives it to somebody else. And it's not going to give it to them. So it's going to give it to other people that are in your life that actually do care. And, for that reason, I would just say it's just take that option off the table. There's many, but like, honestly, the best revenge is a good life. Like, if you really want to show her like the pain that she caused you, live an amazing life and let all of that pain and that anger propel you. Like, use it as rocket fuel to propel you to the next level. And that's how you stick it to her. Like, you get into like the best shape of your life, you write a book, you just start like crushing it in your life. Like, that's how you stick it to her. And yeah, and frankly, she will twist that, and she will make herself the victim. And then it's like the ultimate source of supply. And then she's going to soak that for all it's worth, and possibly even lure in more men, because it's, oh, feel so bad for me. My ex, he was so unstable and I just stayed with him. And aren't I just the martyr? Aren't I just the amazing one? Because he was so sick and I was there for him and I just couldn't take it anymore. Oh, she would run with that like you wouldn't believe. So, yeah, I wouldn't give them any of that satisfaction. So, okay, so let's hop into, we're about 17 minutes in here. So let's hop into the book club thing. Actually, real quick, let me just touch on that a little bit more. If you are feeling suicidal to the point where you do feel that you're a danger to yourself, I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage you to get help. Whether that means calling 911, checking yourself in someplace, calling a doctor and getting on some medication, getting into therapy, calling a suicide hotline. There's 24-hour suicide hotlines that you can call and just talk to people. So there are resources out there, and we need you. Like, we need you on this team, and you are valuable and you do matter. And many of your best days are still ahead of you. Like, they really, really are. I know it can feel like your world is absolutely blown apart, but it's not. This is temporary. This is temporary. You can rebuild. You can have an even better life than you had before. So please just know that. And you're not alone in feeling this way. So, okay. Okay, so let's talk about the book. Who has read the book? And if so, what was your favorite part in it? And I'm going to start with my favorite part. I had printed off my notes from my website, which were my top 8 takeaways from the book. But I'm going to start with my favorite part, which is the last page here. And it's at the end of the book. And it's the Psychopath Free Pledge. And I just love this. So the pledge goes, I will never beg or plead for somebody else again. I will never tolerate criticism about my body, my age, my weight, my job, or any other insecurities I might have. Good partners won't put me down, they'll raise me up. I will take a step back to objectively look at my relationship at least once a month to make sure that I'm being respected and loved and not flattered and love-bombed. I will always ask myself the question, would I ever treat someone else like this? If the answer is no, then I don't deserve to be treated like that either. I will trust my gut. I understand that it is better to be single than in a toxic relationship. I will not be spoken to in a condescending or sarcastic way. Loving partners will not patronize me. I will not allow my partner to call me jealous, crazy, or any other dismissive accusations. My relationships will be mutual and equal at all time. Love is not about control and power. If I ever feel unsure about any of these steps, I will seek out help from a friend, a support group, or a therapist. I will not act on impulsive decisions. I love it. I love that. So yeah, Lucy says, asking the question, would I do that all the time helps to give me perspective. Yes, I agree completely. It's such a quick and easy way to take a step back and get that emotional distance between like ourselves and the situation, and to really think about, yeah, like would I want this for somebody else that I care, if would I want this for somebody else that I cared about? And if the answer is no, then it's like, well, then what does that mean about my relationship with myself, right? So interesting. Wise Tech says, I couldn't sign the pledge page. I was reading the ebook version. I couldn't sign it either. All my books are ebooks these days, but I printed it out. So, let's see. I thought this one was a really big one. So number one, my top takeaways. The toxic people condition us to ignore our intuition, and we must learn to trust it again. Instead of judging outwardly, we need to perceive inwardly. Good people make you feel good. Bad people make you feel bad. Be very careful about dating and making new friends after getting out of a relationship with a psychopath. You are incredibly vulnerable, and odds are you don't even know it. Get a constant. Think of someone you love that constantly inspires and never disappoints. How does your constant make you feel? Do you feel unhinged, anxious, jealous? When you are away from them, do you spend hours analyzing their behavior and defending yourself? No. You feel peaceful and calm. You know where you stand. You don't need to understand why you don't like being around them. The constant grounds you and makes you stop wondering if it's you or them. I just adore that concept. I think that is so incredibly powerful. And again, it helps to give that emotional distance of wondering what it is. Is it us? Is it them? Emotional manipulators create confusion and they cause introspection to that point where it's the whole, is it me? Is it them? Like, what's going on? There's a problem, but I can't tell who it is. The other, I think, deeper point to this with toxic people condition us to ignore our intuition is that if you have a narcissistic person, narcissist, sociopath, psychopath, to me, it's all shades the same color. Emotional manipulator, we'll just go with that umbrella term for it. If you have an emotional manipulator as a parent, then you, from birth, have been conditioned to ignore your intuition. And so when people grow up in a den of dysfunction like that, where you can't tell, it's like Alice in Wonderland. Like you can't tell like what's up is down and what's down is up, and they're criticizing you and they're blaming you and they're minimizing. You're not allowed to have emotions. You're not allowed to criticize. You're not allowed to complain. You're not allowed to protest with how you're treated. It's very much the mindset of whatever the narcissist is going to give you, whatever crumbs they're going to give you, that you need to learn how to survive on that and be grateful for it. And if you're not, then you're somehow spoiled, bratty, entitled, or you're the problem that you're the narcissist. And so, if you're growing up in an environment like that, where that's your normal, odds are, all of us, like we all are our own baseline for normal. So we might not realize, especially if you grew up in a home where you had a narcissistic parent who maybe wasn't so overtly abusive. Maybe they didn't call you names. Maybe they didn't physically hit you, but it was it was always all about them. And there was always that grinding down and that minimization and that invalidation. So a person might have grown up in an abusive home and not even realized it. They just know that they feel like they really have a poor sense of identity. They're very out of touch with who they are. The older they get, kind of the less their life makes sense. They probably struggle with a lot of anxiety and depression and probably chronic pain and, probably stomach issues and just all kinds of issues, because when we're not living an authentic life, we have to learn how to live a life that's not our own. And to continue to stuff all of that down inside of us, it takes its toll on a person over time. And again, like, it's sort of like the last thing the fish notices is the water. So if we're used to feeling this way, if we're used to not being allowed to be angry or sad or mad or we feel that we just have to put on a happy face and be okay with things, then our understanding of what's appropriate behavior, our understanding of what's, like a quote unquote normal relationship is really, really skewed. Because if growing up with a narcissist is normal, right? If Alice in Wonderland, crazy making land is normal, then a lot of stuff is not going to register as problematic until it gets worse than what our normal is, if that makes sense. So, it can be very disorienting from a young age. And so when they grow up in a home like that, and then they start getting older, and then they start dating and encountering, generally it's problematic person after problematic person. Maybe there are some decent ones kind of like peppered in between there, but it might feel kind of like a crapshoot. And a lot of people that have a wide variety of abusive relationships, or let's just use the word toxic, because I think people people have this idea of an abusive relationship just being between a man and a woman in like a marriage, but it can be between friends, coworkers, all kinds of toxic people. So if you're finding yourself with a bunch of toxic relationships in your life, then that's something that's worth examining. And so I thought that was, yeah. Lucy says, we do tend to choose psychopaths as mates if we were raised by a psychopath. Yeah, we do. And we oftentimes don't even realize it until, like I was just saying, if our line for normal is here, if we grew up being yelled at, belittled, given the silent treatment, hit, with a parent that was an addict or an alcoholic, stuff that to a healthy, like in alignment person, for a person that's in alignment, they're going to have really solid boundaries. They're going to have very high standards for what they allow in their life. Anything that's like abuse, addiction, adultery, bad attitude, being treated with a lack of dignity and respect, all of that is just instant deal breaker stuff. But for the rest of us that grew up in some dysfunction, we might consider it to be workable behavior. And we might justify it thinking like, well, but it's not as bad as what I've experienced before. Right? Or because odds are if we grew up in it, we've been making excuses for it since we were really small. Oh, well, this person, they yell, they belittle, they drink, they do whatever because they had a bad childhood. They had stress at work. It's just excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse. So a lot of it is, yeah, Mary says, we need a new normal. We take the shit because we are used to it. And a lot of the time, yeah, that's a lot of what it is. It's because it doesn't register as deal breaker behavior. It registers as, I can somehow earn their love. I think that's what a lot of us tend to think. Like, because if we've had a parent, if we grew up in that, then it's this idea of that's what we've had to do. Like if we're just on our best behavior, if we don't create any problems, if we walk on eggshells, if we just learn to stuff all our emotions deep down inside and just kind of be like this perfect little doll, then we can earn their love. And that mindset really sets up a child for failure in life. And until that child gets to an age, generally it's after these kinds of relationships where they experience enough pain that it's that wake up call of, whoa, yeah, okay, like something's really off here. What's off? And realizing, okay, like I didn't, because when you're in one of these relationships as an adult, I don't know about you guys, but I know for me, it really felt, and I've been in, I talk in my videos about two of my main ones, but, and it wasn't until I began doing these videos, and I'm like, actually, no, it's actually been quite a few more than that. The two that I talk about only registered because they were so extreme, like Lifetime TV movie extreme, whereas the rest of them were just like crazy making, jerks, and or just crazy makers, So, yeah, realizing that it's healthy to have deal breaker stuff. This is not our fault by any stretch. And, a lot of, like, if it's not a lot, so much of what humans do, and I think it's something like 85% of our behavior is thought to be driven by our subconscious. And it's the whole kind of thing, like, once we know better, then we can do better. And that's, I think, the power in talking about what problematic behavior looks like, and also hearing the stories of other people, because it's a long, hard road when it's just us trying to sort through the rubble, trying to figure out what happened, how did I get here, how did I not see this earlier, like how did this happen to me, or how did this happen to me again, and what's like, why am I a magnet, like, for these people, like how is this happening, and having those realizations of just all these aha moments of like understanding this is problematic behavior and feeling validated. Because if it's more covert, right, if you're not being called names, if you're not being yelled at, if you're not being hit, then for a lot of people it just doesn't register. And so they're kind of perpetually, and I think Psychopath Free, this book, really nails that, because it's that feeling of knowing something's off but not being able to quite pinpoint what it is, and then trying to explain it. It just gets so twisted up and turned around trying to explain it to other people. It just comes across like we're petty, or that like we're making too big of a deal out of something. It's just hard to capture all of the he calls it conversations from hell, and that's exactly what it is. It's so hard to capture that. It just leaves a person confused. Like, I don't even know what happened, but all I know is our conversation just keeps going off the rails and like into the forest, and I don't know how or why, and I don't know what my part is in things, and all of this. So yeah, Bittersweet says they were broken before we met them. Yes. Katrina says word salad. Yep. Yep. Lucy says I still cannot be around psychopaths, though. I cannot. And I see it now like really easily, and it still hurts, so I have to leave. I'm the same way. Even being around dysfunction of any degree, of any kind, is, for any length of time, is really hard for me. I don't want it in my life. I don't have time for it. It's just a big waste of time. And I don't do it. I don't do it. And it's hard. We talked about this last night, with setting boundaries and cutting people out of our lives, and how was sort of like pulling a thread on a sweater. Like once you start realizing, okay, this person is really problematic, like really, like I can point to stuff with this person and just be like, this person, they scream, they yell, they call names, they do all kinds of stuff. This one is like the low-hanging fruit, right? Like I need to distance myself from this person. But then we start kind of, okay, then we do that and we're like, oh my gosh, like I feel like I can breathe. I can't believe I've gone through life for so long with this. It feels like you've been carrying them around, like you've been carrying around, 200 pounds on your back. And then realizing, okay, there's some other people that are starting to, I don't like the way I feel. Like I feel tense, I feel anxious, I feel defensive, I feel, this person doesn't feel safe to me. And realizing, okay, I need to start distancing myself from them. So like what, and then of course, kind of navigating that line, like what does that look like to you? Is it, you know, instead of spending a month with them over Christmas, is it 2 weeks? Or is it 3 days? Or is it not even going over there? Is it meeting them for lunch? Is it just calling them on the phone? Is it just sending a text? Is it not even calling them at all? Right? So, and this is where it goes back to you figuring out, regaining your intuition and regaining your sense of self. And for a lot of people, myself included, that means rebuilding from the ground up because we never developed a really healthy, authentic self to begin with. Like that was stomped out at a pretty early age. Lucy says, I will not surrender my peace ever again. Yep, I agree. And once you get, it's sort of like, I would imagine, if you're used to living by a factory that's just puts all this pollution in the air and you're used to breathing really smoggy, dirty air, and then you move out to the country and it's fresh air and it's that feeling of, oh, I can breathe and this is so amazing. Like you couldn't pay a person to go back to that because it feels so good. It feels so good to feel so good. That's what it is. And Lisa says, being around dysfunction is hard for me too, but I'm at work and I'm surrounded by it. I got rid of my narcissist, but I can't get rid of my boss. Well, you can. I mean, you could start looking for another job. That's the thing. Like this, we're talking like radical self-care. like this is no joke. And life is too short. And it's one of those things when you're on your deathbed and you're 110, right? And you're laying there and you're looking back on your life, I guarantee you're not going to think back and think, oh, I'm so glad I stayed at that job with that awful boss for 25 years. You're not going to think that at all. It's not, it's so not worth it. It's not, nothing is worth your safety or your sanity. Nothing. So it's not easy, it's not convenient, it's not fair, but it's either going to involve like setting boundaries or just driving on, because it ain't worth it. And on the same hand too, is thinking you're never going to look back. I mean, this is one of my big aha moments when I was going through my whole healing phase, was like this realization. I was losing everything. Like, I had a house going to foreclosure. I went into bankruptcy. I had miscarried. I just my whole life was falling apart. And the narcissist left and, just took my self-esteem with him. And it was just really, really, really awful. And I remember just so many times, like just being so stressed out and so worried, like how am I going to do this? How am I going to dig out from this? How am I going to, all of this debt and all of this everything. And it was the realization of, you know what? The one thing that I know for sure is that I'm never going to look back on this point in my life and think to myself, boy, I really wish I would have worried about that more. Like, Never, not once. I will never think that. And I guess once I realized that, it it was sort of like, oh, like it is what it is. It's all gonna unfold. It's all unfolding. Like this ball is in motion. I now I'm, like this, it's in motion. So I don't have to worry about it. Like it's gonna happen. It's happening. So I can either just accept what's going on, or I can work to change it. And it's kind of the whole, realizing what you do have control over and what you don't have control over. That was probably like the best realization, because I think when you're in the thick of things, it really feels like, oh, I have to really worry about this. I have just like all of this anxiety running through me at all times, and like there's something wrong with me if I'm making the conscious decision to be happy right now and my whole life is falling apart. But that was a big thing for me, realizing that I could separate my emotions from the events in my life. Like they don't need to be connected. They are by default, but you can also make that conscious choice to just, like I mentioned periodically, with this ball, like taking the time to practice feeling different emotions. So you can tell yourself, okay, I'm feeling like really, really depressed right now. And then it's weird. Like it's like you're stepping back and watching your thoughts, like realizing that you are not your thoughts. You're the thinker, the watcher behind your thoughts. It's the whole like Eckhart Tolle kind of thing. And realizing, okay, like I can choose this. So right now my default emotion is depression, totally valid emotion for what I'm going through, but I can choose to take some time right now and pick up another emotion of happiness or enjoyment. And your brain's not going to like that because it's very attached. It's attaching those emotions to those events, but you're in control. And taking time to set that down, and the depression and the anxiety and the fear down, and doing something different, like watching stand-up comedy on YouTube for 10 minutes, listening to guided imagery meditation video on YouTube before you go to bed, taking time to go for a run or to play with your pet or anything like that. And once you start realizing that you really are in control of your emotions, that's really, 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 really game-changing, powerful stuff. It takes a lot of practice, and I am by no stretch perfect at it, but it's awesome. Anthony, have you ever read the book The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle? If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's such a great book, and he has a ton of videos on YouTube too. So it's very much about like being in the now, being in the moment, and really great stuff. Yeah, check them out. Tony Robbins is another speaker that I absolutely adore. So you might want to check him out too if you haven't ever seen his stuff. Yeah, thank you, Katrina. The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It can kind of seem like kind of deep, maybe even like hippie woo-woo, but push through. It's a really, really great book, and there's a lot to it. It's really cool stuff. And the whole thing, like breakthroughs in life often come from breakdowns. And there's a lot of power. When I was going through all of this the second time, and like I said, my life was in shambles. I'm like, I have nothing. I have everything that I just, what else can I lose? I mean, I just felt like I was losing everything on every level. And my brother, who's a personal trainer, had told me, I called him and I just was sobbing on the phone. I just like, how did I get here again? And I'm stupid. And how did I miss the signs? And I knew better. And what's wrong with me? And I just was so upset. And why me? What's wrong with me? Why doesn't anybody just love me? Like, I don't get it. I feel like I'm a good person. What am I doing? And he had said, he's like, Dana, you are at this crossroads, and the power of this is there's like this narrow window when a person is in, there's a lot of power in like emotional collapse. And he's like, if you can take this energy and channel it into something positive, and he was the one that I got the phrase like turning it into rocket fuel, like turning it into rocket fuel to radically propel your life in a different direction. And he was saying a lot of his clients that come to him, he's like, the ones that come to him that have hit that rock bottom moment, that emotional moment where they look in the mirror, they don't even recognize themselves, or they see a picture of themselves at a friend's wedding and they're just horrified by what they see, or they can't play with their child because they're so out of breath, or they hate what they see in the mirror. And he's like, those are the people that are in so much pain that they're motivated to take, intense action to go do something different. And those are the people that really, that pain helps to catapult them to the next level. And so he kept telling me, he's like, Dana, don't waste this pain. Don't waste it. Like turn this energy into something positive. And he was absolutely right. Absolutely right. Yep. D5054 says, power and emotional collapse, nods. When things fall apart, they can fall into place. Yes, totally. So, let's see. The next takeaway. That's loud. Sorry. The next takeaway from the book was identity erosion. The psychopath strips you of your dignity by taking back everything they once pretended to feel during the idealization period. They make a mockery of your dreams, subtly suggesting that you might not be the one for them after all, but nonetheless stringing you along for the added attention. After grooming you to be dependent and compliant, they use this power to manufacture desperation and desire. In a whirlwind of emotions, your fantasy gradually shifts into a nightmare. Yes, that's so true. And it's so subtle. It's just so subtle. It's making little comments about other people and how attractive these other people are, or how smart they are, or how before they couldn't get enough of you, and they wanted to talk to you all the time and give you all this attention, and now all of a sudden they're pulling away and they're busy, and you're finding yourself in a scramble to try to get their attention back, to try to get their affection, to try to earn their love, right? And because it's so subtle, and it just feels like, okay, well, what did I do wrong? I must have done something wrong. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about last night, where it's so important to realize that there is an ocean of difference between a relationship and a manipulationship. And where a lot of people go wrong is if they can't tell the difference between the two. Because it's really hard to, for sure, when you're in it, right? But if you're in therapy and you've got a therapist who doesn't understand the power and control dynamics of an abusive relationship, or only thinks of an abusive relationship in terms of, again, like extreme verbal abuse or physical abuse, and they're missing all of the psychological component of it, then if they're treating that manipulationship like a relationship, that's an added layer of re-victimization and a huge added layer of crazy making, because then it's what's their individual issue is then treated like a relationship issue, that you somehow share some sort of part in their behavior. But the thing is, we can't like get them to change. It just doesn't work like that. Like they have to want the change, and they don't, which is a problem, which is why it'll never work. So yeah, so once those things start to switch, it can be, it's this whole confusion period of what did I do wrong? How can I be a better partner? You know, like they start acting squirrely. You bring it up, they tell you that you're jealous or that you're insecure, and it's like, well, no, I think it's weird. I'm sorry, like I think it's weird that you're texting other people at night and hiding your phone and staring at the waitress, and you know what I mean? Like that's not normal behavior, which goes back to point one in the book with the get a constant. So asking yourself, if you had, so for me, my constant is my brother. And if I encounter questionable behavior by a guy, I ask myself, like, would Victor do that? You know, how would he do something like that? And the answer is no, he wouldn't. And if I were to show him, you know, if I had like problematic text messages from a guy, if I were to show him those, what would he say? And that helps me to get that emotional distance to see the situation clearly. It's a really powerful concept. I highly recommend experimenting with that in your own life. Because frankly, when we're experiencing confusing behavior, it's generally because we know the truth, but we wish we didn't. And that's why we're confused. It's cognitive dissonance. It's that mental distress. It's that mental struggle of trying to like figure out, you know, if we want to stay in that relationship, then we've got to pick the thought that's going to allow us to continue that action. And we can't have the thought of they're cheating if we're going to stay in that relationship, if we're not okay with staying with a cheater. So then we have to pick a different thought, which is generally to either just be like, well, I'm just confused, or you know, maybe I like we buy into the gaslighting. And of course all of this is subconscious. Like this is, please do not get me wrong. Like this is so not your fault. It's just is, take a step back and examine. Like this is our brain at work, and it's fascinating stuff how this happens. So, oh, what? I love that. Carrie says, you inspired me to incorporate character development and child-friendly behavior building in my classroom, and parents are just loving this. This has given me such purpose. Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, that makes my heart smile like you have no idea. Like, oh, that's awesome. Like, oh my gosh. That's so cool. You know, we've talked about this before. Like, I really strongly feel that all of this, like this self-awareness of knowing who we are, having healthy boundaries, having healthy standards. This really, it's so much more than recovering from this relationship. Like, I really strongly believe, like, this is the next wave of human evolution. And I know that that's a strong statement, but I fully believe that, you know, we're like, we're there as a society, you know, which, and if you think about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that base level, you have physical needs, you know, I just kind of have them chunked out so I can remember them, but like physical needs, and then you have like emotional needs, but then you have the needs of self-esteem and then self-actualization. And as a society, you know, our physical needs are, you know, at least in this society, our physical needs are met, our somewhat basic emotional needs are met, and we're slowly climbing that ladder. This is really the first time in history that this has happened, right? Because before, people died when they were like, you know, 25. Like that, the life expectancy just wasn't there, and life was hard. It wasn't about living, it was about survival. You know, it was about existing. And life was really tough. It wasn't about discovering yourself, right? It wasn't about finding out who you were. It was about, if you don't work 80 hours a week, you're a bum. And you've got to do this because there's no other choice. And, you know, there was no childhood. You know, you were put to work as soon as you could pretty much stand. Like you were out in the field, or you were, you were doing something. So it's, to me, this is kind of where I see all of this going. And it's so cool, I think, to talk about kids, to talk to kids about all of this. And it's just, there's so much that we can instill in them. And I'm excited for them to see like where they're going to really go with all of this. And I wish I could live to be like 500 years old. So I could just see like the ripple effect in opening up all of these conversations, and just seeing people really come into full bloom of like who they are. Because that's what this is really all about, you know? It's about finding your authentic self and what makes you you, and pouring all of your energy into like putting those gifts out to the world. So yeah, connecting the dots says, I feel like I became more human since awakening. Oh, completely, right? Like I have a friend at work, and we talk a lot about this, where it's like, man, I feel like I've been driving this, my car through life with my eyes shut. Like it's seriously amazing that my life has not gone so much more off course than it has. And it's just, frankly, it's been dumb luck, because I didn't know who I was. I was not in tune with my intuition. I was living the life that other people felt that I should live. I was making my decisions based out of like fear or scarcity. It was never about, I didn't know what I wanted. I was always reading these books. I still am super, super interested in self-help, but I was so interested in self-help and, just kind of scrambling for something, like, and I didn't know what, like trying to make sense of things, and not realizing that the missing piece was I just didn't know who I was. So yes, it's cool stuff. Mary says, if you are being exploited in any way by the people that you are with, they are not your people. Walk away. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, if a person's not lifting you up, then if they're not empowering you, if you're not feeling empowered and inspired and safe with them, that you can have an opinion, that you can have emotions, that you can express yourself, that you can communicate with them, if there's not dignity and respect, if there's not that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication, then it's not going to work. You can't make a person, like a really dysfunctional person, you can't have a healthy relationship with a dysfunctional person. Like it's impossible. So only they have to work on themselves, and just like we have to work on ourselves. Like nobody can do it for us. Like this is about us discovering us. It's not about me having the answers. It's about you having the answers and us discussing all of this, right? So that's kind of like my concern with, I think a lot of speakers, and just the concept of speakers in general, or anybody that's looking outside of themselves. Like I understand the need for guidance and validation. It's super important, but I would love for all of us to get to the point where we can listen to feedback from other people, but that we are so solidly grounded in who we are and what we're about and the direction that we're headed, that we can be in a room full of people that disagree with us and still know ourselves well enough to know that we are on the right path for us, and not be swayed by what they say. So, okay. The next takeaway was the destroying your boundaries. They condition their victims to feel ashamed, inadequate, and unstable. They break them down through belittling, teasing, and manufactured jealousy. Your self-esteem is worn away through a calculated mean and sweet cycle. Slowly, your standards will fall so low that you become grateful for utterly mediocre treatment. You will excuse your partner's bad behavior, unable to acknowledge the painful truth behind your relationship. Something has changed. You rearrange your life around them to make yourself available for them. You begin to initiate contact more and more, trying to get back their attention and affection. Their responses feel hollow at best. You exaggerate their positive aspects to anyone who will listen, so you can continue to live the lie yourself. When things end, your friends and family will be shocked by how differently you describe them. They may begin putting you down in front of others under the guise of joking, and if you have a problem with it, then you are hypersensitive. If you go along with it, playing the role of the crazy, unintelligent partner whose only purpose is to entertain them. With time, you will come to believe this facade. All the while, they will sprinkle intermittent reminders of the idealization phase. If you reach a breaking point, they will always be ready to swoop back in with promises of unlimited love and affection. They will never take the blame for their behavior. These superficial distractions will be enough to convince you that they're still the person you fell in love with. Wow. So it's intense. That's intense stuff with how the twisting and the turning happens, and that erosion of boundaries and that erosion of standards. And this is why it's so important, I think, for us to be able to realize both what is problematic behavior ahead of time, how problematic behavior feels, because that's the whole thing with red flags, is they're more felt than seen. And so you're feeling when something's off, and then having high standards and really getting clear on that. Because again, a lot of us, if we were raised in an environment where we weren't allowed to have standards, like we had to settle for crumbs, we had to settle for, crumbs of attention, of affection, of kindness, of what have you, as an adult, it's the same. Then we're settling for crumbs of attention, affection, love, kindness, loyalty, honesty, these kinds of things. And it's that stuff. It's deal breaker behavior, and to walk away, like there's nothing there. It's the whole saying, like crumbs won't keep a person fed, they will keep a person starving. And it's so important that we get to the point where we really realize that. Yes. Okay. So D says, talking about, what to do if she's got a friend right now who's in a relationship with an emotional manipulator, but she's going through her own healing. I would encourage you, this goes back to knowing your boundaries with stuff like this, because it's really hard to try to rescue somebody else if you feel like you're drowning. And if it's too much for you, then it's okay. Like, everybody has their limits, and this is a lot of heavy stuff. And so, you could encourage her to reach out to a support group. If you're not already in a support group, you can get into a support group yourself and be there to the extent that you feel that you can be there without sinking yourself or without endangering like your safety or your sanity. So it's kind of just navigating that line. I like this part. Okay. During a relationship with a psychopath, you are likely to experience a range of emotions that you've never felt before. Extreme jealousy, neediness, rage, anxiety, and paranoia. After every outburst, you think to yourself, if only you hadn't behaved that way, then maybe they'd be happier with you, or that they wouldn't have left. Think again. These were not your emotions. They were manufactured by the psycho to make you question your own good nature, as well as your sanity and perception of events. Serial provokers are experts at seeking out flexible, easygoing people. They exploit this quality by constantly provoking their target with covert jabs, minimization, veiled humor, and patronizing. The target will attempt to avoid conflict by remaining pleasant, choosing to forgive, and excusing this behavior in favor of maintaining harmony. The serial provoker will continue to aggravate the target until they finally snap. Once this occurs, the provoker will sit back, feign surprise, and marvel at how passive-aggressive, angry, and volatile the target is. The target is expected to remain calm and peaceful no matter what, while the serial provoker feels entitled to do whatever they please. They provoke an emotion, they deny it, they spin it, they blame you, and then forgive you and state that you need to work on your issues, is what that boils down to. So that is so crazy making. When they do something to provoke an emotion, you explode, they stay so cool, calm, and collected, and it is incredibly patronizing of, oh my goodness, why are you, I'm just really, I'm surprised by this, and I just don't know where this is coming from, and you know, boy, you've really got some jealousy issues, and you know, or these anger issues, like where is this coming from? And I really would like things to work between us, but I'm concerned that you're bipolar, or I'm concerned that you really need therapy. And, I'm just so concerned. And so, again, like that can be really, really crazy making for a person. So, yeah, Lucy says that behavior is infuriating, Dana. It's so awful. Yes, it's so incredibly damaging to a person. It just, and the thing is too, when a person goes through that, when they go through gaslighting to that degree, where your sense of everything is being eroded, like your identity is being eroded, your perception of events, your sanity, all of this is slowly being eroded, and it's being replaced with the psychopath's twisted version of events, which are ever shifting because they are like the puppet master, and it's a game. It's a game to them. So, their whole goal is just to take people straight to emotional hell. Like, it's, and the whole time, like, we think we're working on a relationship, and their whole goal is to destroy us. This is why, if you're going through that, like, there is no fixing that. This is not a relationship issue. That's an individual issue within them. And it's really, 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 really important that people see that, because it can keep a person stuck in these kinds of relationships for years or decades if that psychological abuse, which is really hard to pinpoint, if a person doesn't see that as abuse, and if they mistake that as a relationship issue instead of an individual issue. So once you see it, can see what, really, I think it's so huge for so many of us, realizing what gaslighting is and how the different ways that it happens. Because again, this is, I think, the benefit of a support group in listening to kind of these kinds of videos on YouTube and talking to each other, is it might not have ever crossed our radar that what we went through, that like one event, that was even problematic, because we might have fully believed, like, oh my gosh, I thought it was I really believed them when they said that I must have misheard or misremembered, or that I was jealous or insecure, because there's always kind of like this kernel of truth to it, right? But it's always surrounded in a big ball of a lie, and it leaves a person perpetually confused and doubting their perceptions. The problem is the problem is when a person, that there's a ripple effect to this. And when a person gets out of an abusive relationship, it's not just, things don't just end there. There's like this longer term effect of that whole identity erosion that he's talking about. So now it's rebuilding, reestablishing your perceptions, your judgment, your trust in yourself, your trust in other people, learning to identify like what's deal breaker behavior, what's workable behavior. There's so much to sort through. Okay. Was really on there. Actually, let me tear off the corner. That's better. Okay. So then, yes. Okay. Evie says, I didn't understand any of it until afterwards. I was in shock and realized something new every day. Sometimes still I think of things I didn't realize that were being done. Oh, completely. Yes. And I think this can go on for quite a while. And for people that haven't been through something like that, they don't understand it. And they're like, okay, well, you just need to get over it. You need to move on. You need to let it go. But our brain, like what, it's sort of like, I would imagine it would be a lot like getting out of a cult and realizing that you were in a cult and not a church, right? Or not a spirituality group, or not like just the family, right? Like it was like you realize, okay, wow, because I don't think people like don't join a cult thinking like I'm gonna join a cult, right? Like it's this idea of this people are very welcoming. They're very, it's love bombing. That's where that term comes from, is actually cults. So it's that level of intensity of come join us. We want you to be one of us, and what starts off is all of this attention and affection, and all of this slowly starts to turn because you have a narcissist at the helm, right? And who's puppeteering the whole thing. And the next thing you know, everybody's kind of being taken on this wild ride that ends with these ideas of, them escaping Earth to go live on Mars, and they're going to do it by killing themselves or what have you. It's wild stuff. But people, the thing is, ideas don't start off that obviously problematic, or else people would see them. It starts off much slower and much further upstream. And then it's just a series of like things that are a little bit weird. Like, oh, you know what? We should really we all wear the same color of dress. And then people are like, oh, that's kind of weird. Well, yeah, well, it's because, we give up these earthly pleasures. It's a distraction. People are like, oh, okay. And then it's, oh, and we also, marry children. And okay, this must be God's will. Okay, I guess so. It says in the Bible, and maybe it's just a cultural thing. Maybe I'm just weird thinking that an 8-year-old shouldn't have sex or be raped is really what it is. And it's like that slow descent into madness where things get really, people get lost in it. So yeah, if you don't know what it is, you don't know. I mean, you don't know. Like until things get really, really bad. I mean, that's the thing with abusive relationships. Most people don't realize that they're in an abusive relationship. And frankly, even if they're being hit, they oftentimes don't realize it, because in their mind, it's this idea of, if I can still tolerate it, then it's not abuse. It's still within that realm of workable behavior. Like, this person just had a bad childhood. They have anger issues. They drink too much. Justification. Like, kind of given enough time, understanding, love, rehab, religion, therapy, that they can change. And then things just keep getting progressively worse and worse and worse. And they hang on. People tend to hang on until they absolutely can't hang on anymore. And of course, during all of this, they're being manipulated through guilt and fear and obligation and religion and finances and threats of you're never going to see your kids again, and just all kinds of things that keeps a person stuck in that. This is one of the things I was thinking the other day about the power and control wheel, which I want to say it was developed quite a while ago, like maybe 30 or 40 years ago, maybe even longer than that. And I really feel like it needs to be updated. I think it's brilliant for what it was at the time. But I think, so the outside, if you're familiar with the power and control wheel, the outside of it is physical abuse. That physical abuse kind of holds all of it together, with the power and control at the center, and then the different forms of abuse, with physical abuse being the one thing that really holds it all together. I disagree with that. It's not, people don't stay for fear of that physical abuse. It's the psychological abuse that keeps a person stuck, and it's the psychological abuse that keeps a person continuing to go back and wondering, is it us or is it them? Maybe if I just change, it's the psychological abuse, it's the psychological manipulation that keeps it all stuck and keeps all of this, keeps society stuck and not being able to identify what's problematic. So, yeah, let's see. Oh gosh, yeah, totally. Connecting the dots says, I mean, the concept of narcissism requires so much thinking out of the box. It's really hard to get there without help. Completely. Completely. It's a community effort. This is why I'm such a fan of support groups, because this was my struggle. So like when I was in therapy after the second relation, actually like the first relationship, I had a therapist at the domestic violence shelter, the agency that I used to work at. But it was like a different chapter of, like in a different city of the agency. And I didn't realize what had happened. She didn't identify what had happened. I'm like, it feels nice to talk to somebody, but I didn't feel like I was getting anywhere. And then after this happened again, and I was talking to a therapist about it, and I was going once a week, and again I was like, well, she's like nice, and I feel like she's very well intended, but again, I don't feel like I'm getting anywhere. And then it was the whole thing of like, maybe therapy just takes a really long time. Like I don't is it me? Is it them? Like what should I even expect? And I kind of felt like I was, following Moses through the desert, and I'm like, do you know where we're going? Like it just didn't. I wasn't getting anywhere. And it wasn't until I got into a support group and started hearing the insights and aha moments and the little snippets of other people's stories that the dots really began connecting. And it was just powerful. I had more forward momentum within probably the first probably hour of being in that support group than I had in years and years of therapy. This is not to say that I think their individual therapy doesn't have its place. I think it definitely does. I encourage people to do both. I think both have value and both are equally important, but in different ways. So I think a person can get the validation and the clarity of what's going on in a support group with people that have been there, done that. I think and it needs to be multiple people, not just like one other person. Like it needs to have that validation and clarity from stories from multiple people, because everybody's bringing their own situation to the table, and there's so much shame and guilt and embarrassment surrounding these types of relationships that people tend to isolate, and they're not comfortable opening up. And so even just reading the stories of other people can really help a person to open up. And then for a person, the aha moments that they are getting in a support group, to take those and then do a deep dive in individual therapy, or vice versa, right? So like then they're doing a deep dive on certain things in individual therapy and then talking about that in the support group. And it's just, it really, in my opinion, really supercharges a person's healing. Yeah. Connecting the dots says it's just so difficult to get your head around the fact that some people are profoundly different. Yes, we all, we all think that we're human beings, that we're all wired the same way, and that we tend to think that other people are like us. Like if we're sincere in our actions, we tend to think that other people would be sincere in their actions. And it's really hard for us to understand that there are people out there that continually have insincere actions and that they truly just don't care. And, that there are hurtful and harmful people that walk the earth and that they are wolves in sheep's clothing and that they really slide under the radar of so many of us. So yeah, it's a big thing. Dusty says, do narcissists know that they are evil? That's a big question. I think the sadistic ones do. They think they know exactly what they're doing and they enjoy it, and they don't care. I think more, I don't know. To me, I guess I view their behavior as more of like degrees of like lack of it's like, they're out of alignment with their authentic self. That's how I view it too. And that happened to them at an early age as well. They just went the other way on the spectrum where like we went this way, like they went that way. So I think some of them are not aware that they have bad behavior. I think that they really are like in deep denial about it. I think they realize that they cheat and they lie and they manipulate and they steal and they do whatever, but they convince themselves that they're entitled to do that. And which is why like this is the whole sentence, the whole saying of with an abusive person, it's the whole like, look at what you made me do. That's where that stems from. It's them being, it's their justification, it's their cognitive dissonance at work is what it is. So when a person has been able to justify to themselves problematic behavior, then it's a problem. Because it's sort of like any of us, right? Like if we justify anything that we do, if I tell myself that I'm on a diet, but then I go and I'm going to go have ice cream, right? I need to be able to justify doing that. And so I might tell myself, well, I'm going to have a smaller serving, or it's going to be frozen yogurt and not really ice cream, or whatever. I'm going to have to make myself okay with taking that action. It's the same thing with them. If they're going to have whatever kind of problematic behavior, if they're going to hit somebody, choke somebody, manipulate, cheat, lie, steal, even kill, they've got to come up with a thought that matches that action. That is the core of cognitive dissonance. Is human beings, in order for us, all of our behavior stems from that. Our actions always have to line up with our thoughts. Always, always, always. And they're continually like shifting throughout the day of, if we're going to take a certain action, then we have to find a thought that's in line with that. And at the core of that is our value system. So I shouldn't say we all, maybe we all do. Like we all have, or the vast majority of us, I'll say that because it's safer. The vast majority of us have lines in the sand. We might, I don't know. I'm trying to think we might have some sort of problematic behavior. But there's generally and a lot of this is like subconscious. Like there's just a line that we won't cross, right? Like a person, let's say for an example, an addict, they might steal pain medication from, but they might not steal pain medication from somebody who, like, it has none left, right? Like they might have like 2 pills. Let's say that they have cancer and they have 2 pain pills left. Like that might be their line in the sand, that they'll take pain meds, but only if that person has enough that they're not going to suffer, right? So everybody kind of like has their line with what's their own workable behavior, what their own deal breaker behavior is. So it takes a lot for a person to do the mental gymnastics of it's okay for them to choke, to strangle another person, or for them to hurt an animal, or for them to hurt a child. Like, you really have to do some mental gymnastics to be able to justify that kind of stuff. Or to, even like cheat and lie and steal. I mean, it's important that people have like that value system that they hold on to. Yes, Bob says, the Bible says that in the last days, people will be lovers of themselves. That's a narcissist. Yes, connecting the dots says if you don't feel remorse, evil gets an entirely different meaning. Right, it does, because if I think you have to have a concept of good and evil. If you're going to hold on to the concept that you're a good person, then you're going to justify your actions. Just like you have really any group that's ever gone to war or committed acts of terrorism, they don't think that they're doing anything wrong, right? And so then killing is wrapped up in nationalism. It's wrapped up in the sense of purpose and, when you've got really problematic behavior that's cloaked in religion, or it's made legal, like slavery, or like with the Jews and the Holocaust, when you start combining these other elements to it and you're really normalizing problematic behavior, then it quits being a problem, because then it's not seen as evil, it's seen as moral. Like, this is the right thing to do, is to kill these people. And that's some scary stuff when it starts getting to that point. 100 Smiles says, I don't think that nationalism is inherently bad. I don't either. But I do think blind nationalism, like unquestioned nationalism, is. I think it's important for. There's nothing wrong with saying, like, I'm an American, I love to be an American, or I'm whatever, from whatever country, and I love to be from whatever country. There's nothing wrong with that, like being patriotic or having national pride. Where it does become problematic is when I'm backing my country 100% no matter what. Like, then it becomes a problem. It's so important that people be able to think for themselves and not get caught up in what's quote unquote normal or what the masses are doing, and to be able to take a step backwards and say, getting that constant. What would, here's this other person that I think has, really balanced thinking. What would they say about this situation? Or how would I feel if explaining to my grandchild that I took part in this? Trying to get some emotional distance, because it's really hard to see things clearly, especially if people think that they're on the side of God, or they're on the side of good. And if God and good means, genocide, then there's a problem. Interesting. Averill says, in South American folklore, there is something called Wetiko, I think it's called. It's the narcissist virus. in folklore, it spreads like a virus. I'm going to look that up. That's fascinating. It really is like a virus. And it's interesting. So kind of back to like the whole religious, spiritual component of all of this. It's interesting when you go back and you read certain passages in different religious texts, or like you're talking like different folklore or things like that. And it's like this stuff has been going on since, since Cain and Abel, if you believe in that, or since there were more than two people. Like as soon as like the second person arrived on the planet, like there's been issues. So this is like an ongoing thing. And it's not just a problem, it's an epidemic. And what's fascinating to me is it's an epidemic that people aren't aware of. And what's even stranger than that is it's an epidemic that most people are affected by and they're not even aware of it. That's what's so weird. Like it's like people have just been walking around. They're like, my life doesn't work. Like I feel like they've been walking around in shoes that are just too tight, and they didn't realize it, because this level of narcissism, this has been at so many levels in all of our lives, like either from parents or from friends or from community or religion or governments or like gender expectations for both men and women, all kinds of like oppressive ideals that have been passed down from generation to generation. And now I think, like I was saying earlier, like now we're kind of at this point in society where things are stable enough that we have the luxury of examining our lives, because now we're not necessarily in survival mode, but we have the ability to start having some higher level thinking and being like, yes, who am I? What am I about? What do I really want? Those kinds of thoughts, which, if you're, those thoughts are a luxury. Like if you're living in a country where, you're just trying to get by and survive, or you're a million miles away from having thoughts like that. So, okay, so the other point in this book is conversations from hell. I love the way that he puts this. I think that's so appropriate. Circular conversations. Yes, right? Oh, God. Often about the same issues. These little bugs. Nothing gets resolved. You'll think you've worked something out only to begin discussing it again 2 minutes later, and it's as if you never said a word the first time around. Why are they so friendly with their ex? Again. Why are they suddenly not paying attention to you? Again. You get sucked back into this crazy argument only to feel crazy and high maintenance when they decide that they are sick of arguing about this and can't handle your issues. Bring up past wrongdoings and they ignore their own. If they cheated and you are a recovering alcoholic, they'll bring up your past wrongdoings. Were you late to the first date 2 years ago? Then you can't be upset when they haven't talked to you in 3 days. If you bring up any wrongdoings, then you are a bitter lunatic with a list of grievances. They talk to you in a condescending and patronizing tone. Throughout the entire conversation, they will have calm, cool demeanor, almost like they are mocking you, gauging your reactions to see how much farther they can push. When you finally react emotionally, that's when they'll tell you to calm down, they'll raise their eyebrows and they'll smirk, or feign disappointment. Conversations, like everything else, is a competition with a psychopath. Like, underline that. That is so, so important. Richard Grannon, I think it was in his book. Yes, it was. And I forget the title of his book. It was a quick read. It was a good read. And he had said in there something along the lines of, you need to abandon sincere communication with the insincere. And he just nails it. Like that is absolutely true. Like if you've got somebody that's playing to win at all costs, at every angle, then it's really important that you see it for what it is. And the thing too is like once you're here, like once you're in the chat and you've watched enough videos and you've really educated yourself enough, you see this, like you see this stuff crystal clear. The challenge then that you'll have is that you see it clear, but everybody else doesn't. And then you really will wonder, like, is it just me? You know, like it's its own level like of crazy making, but it's not you. It's not you. It's just you've woken up to it and you see it clearly. It's like being in the Matrix. You know, you take the red pill and you're like, oh my gosh, there's this world inside of this world, and everybody else seems they're just asleep. They're asleep to all of this, and like you get it. And you get it. And so once you start getting it, then you can, it's scary because you wake up and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like you see the agents, like in the Matrix, right? Like you see the agents everywhere, but nobody else sees them. They just see normal people. And then that's the first part of it, is like waking up to it. But then the second part is really knowing, you know, who you are and what you're about. So like once you get those two things, some grip, like you don't even need to have it all figured out. Like even having it figured out like 25%, your life is going to be at a very different place in like 6 months from now. So it just doesn't take a lot. So it's cool when you start really realizing you're seeing things clearly, you're seeing yourself clearly, then you're taking clear planned action versus rationalized action, which is what everybody else is taking. You know, they're not seeing things clearly. They're just it's weird. Like human beings, we all think that we're such rational creatures, and the reality is most of us are not, because we're operating from our subconscious patterns. We're not rational creatures. We're rationalizing creatures, and that's why our lives aren't working. And like once we can get rid of that, start thinking clearly, start thinking critically, see things for what they are, then we can start being rational. So huge stuff. Okay, so he says, the conversations from hell. They accuse you of doing things they are doing. It goes beyond projection. They are smearing you with their own flaws and are seeking a reaction. After all, how can you not react to such blatant hypocrisy? That is so crazy making, isn't it? When I think it was Cecilia had mentioned that last night, how narcissists will do that. Like it's everything that they hate about themselves. They're like putting it on you, and it's the weirdest thing, because like they don't see that that's hypocritical like at all. But that goes back to like their own, how they're trying to smooth over their own level of cognitive dissonance. Like if they have to believe that they are kind, decent, good people, then they've got to get rid of all of that negative gack inside of them. And so they take all that out and they smear it all over other people, generally their targets. So all of their weaknesses, all of their insecurities, all of their inadequacies, all of their fears, all of their lying and cheating and manipulating and stealing and all of this, they do this and they just put it on other people. And it allows them to maintain that sense of superiority, that there's nothing wrong with them. So it's, yeah, interesting stuff. He says, okay, throughout a word salad conversation, you're likely to experience a variety of their personalities. Good cop, bad cop, demented cop, stalker cop, scary cop, baby cop. I love the way that he puts that. It's so true. If you're pulling away, then you may get a glimpse of the idealization. A little torture with empty promises. You'll be left wondering who you're even talking to, because their personas are imploding as they struggle to regain control. It's as though the devil itself was unleashed in a desperate fit of fury after being recognized. Twisting, turning, writhing, spewing, flattering, vomiting. I don't know have you guys ever seen that? Have you ever encountered that? If you haven't, it's the most wild thing I've ever seen in my life. I went through this with Steve, and he was in this scramble. It was literally a scramble to try to regain power and control over me and the situation. And he was throwing out everything, like rapid fire, that he thought would work in order to rein me in. And within a span of probably 5 minutes, he went from talking about, us getting married, us trying to have a baby, him hearing voices, him being an alcoholic, him being a drug addict, him being scared, him being intimidated by me, him feeling like he'd met his match and that I was too good for him. Like, it was just, it was watching a person implode. It was the most wild thing. The only thing, him threatening suicide, just all of it, any of it and all of it. And it reminded me of that scene in Terminator 2 where I think it's at the end, when the second Terminator guy, like the cop guy, gets thrown into the lava, or that whatever, like they're at some sort of like metal plant, like metal smithing plant, and it's really, really hot. And so, because he was the shapeshifter guy, if you remember, and he would take on the personas of different people that he thought would get him closer to his target, which John Connor. And so when he fell into that lava, he kept surfacing again, and he was trying to save himself. And in order to save himself, he kept throwing out all of these different identities that he thought, like, he was just in a scramble. And so he was John Connor's adoptive mother. He was Sarah Connor. He was, I think, Terminator. He was Arnold. He was he was the cop. He was all of these things. He was liquid metal. He was all of it. And then finally he just like fell apart. That's totally what it reminded me of. It's just, and that's how they are on many levels anyhow. It feels like the Terminator, because it's like they just don't go away. And they're just relentless. And it's that continuing of like, which mask is going to work? Like, what do you need? And like the way he says it, it's good cop, it's bad cop, it's demented cop, it's stalker cop, it's scary cop, it's baby cop. I think you could also add, it's insecure cop, it's, ideal cop, it's like anything and everything. All of these different personas, whatever you need that they can be. It's exhausting. So, okay, their actions never match up with their words. You are so frequently disappointed that you become relieved when they do something halfway decent. They condition you to become grateful for mediocre treatment. What in the world just happened? You find yourself in conversations that leave you drained. You will spend days or weeks obsessing over the argument. You'll feel exhausted and like you didn't accomplish anything. You will feel the need to defend yourself, and you'll try to have a million pre-planned arguments in your head, ready to respond to all the unaddressed points that you couldn't keep up with. You will try to come up with a diplomatic solution that evenly distributes the blame, and therefore gives you both a chance to apologize and make up. But in the end, you are the only one who is doing the apologizing. Gaslighting and projection. This is when the psychopath distorts reality. It's often done with trivial lies and wrongdoings to bring about a reaction and then deny that it ever took place. If you are like most victims, you are probably very easygoing and will hold off reacting for as long as possible. When you do finally speak up, the psycho will either rewrite history or reject that the incident ever occurred. You may start to doubt your own sanity as a psychopath slowly erodes your grasp on reality. Gaslighting isn't usually blatant abuse. It could be as simple as them saying that they are going to do one thing and then doing something totally different. Like, they're going to say they're going to go to the gym, but instead they go out to dinner with a friend. If you find out it was a lie and then bring it up, they'll likely deny that they ever said they were going to the gym. You'll find yourself repeating the conversation only to discover how petty you sound and how much you're annoying your partner. In a normal relationship, it doesn't matter if plans turn from one thing to another, but with the psychopath, nothing seems as it is. And you find that you are always getting sucked into ridiculous, pointless, and petty conversations that make you seem like an obsessed detective. If you present the truth like a text message or an email, the psychopath will punish you with silent treatment and turn the entire conversation around on you for being paranoid and crazy. I would also add, and not just paranoid and crazy, but how dare you go into their email or their phone? Now they can't trust you. So you're apologizing for finding out that they cheated on you. Is basically what it is. You'll slowly learn that open communication will not be a part of your relationship. A relationship with a psychopath is a no-win situation. No matter how much they hurt you, it will always be your fault. Katrina says, yup, check, check, check. Yes, I like that. Truth Seeker says, Richard Grannon once said, the point is to have no point. Yes, it's to provoke, it's to erode, it's to crazy make, it's to all of that. And there is no method to the madness. There is no rhyme or reason behind it. It's just their game. Like it's I think a lot of times it's just entertaining to them to see what they can do. Yeah, Evie said, that's exactly what my ex did when I confronted her with proof of her cheating. She told me, how dare I accuse her? But I was showing her facts. I was showing her letters. Yes. And then they twist it. How did you get these letters? How did you get these emails? Like, you psycho, you stalker, I can't believe you went into my email. And then they spin it back around on you to where now you're on trial for it. And it's, and then of course, then they run and they tell everybody else, oh my God, she's such a psycho. She went through my email, leaving out the fact that you were desperate to find some sort of validation or closure that they really were in fact cheating on you. Of course, they leave all that out. They just put that you had gone through their email. And of course, the texts, if you put your confrontations to them in text or email, they also like edit that out, and then they'll use that. They'll show somebody, they're like, hey, look at these, like, oh gosh, like look at these, look at these text messages. Like, this is a problem, and see what a psycho they are, but they'll have like deleted a lot of it. Jordan, oh thanks. He says, Dana said something I really liked. He said, you shouldn't date while your buckets are empty, just like you shouldn't go food shopping when you're hungry. Yeah. Yeah, if we're dating when we're lonely, then odds are we're not going to make good decisions, and we won't even know it. Bear says, do you think that they'll have a treatment for their disorder in a few decades? They might, but the thing is, though, that's such it's an important question, but I think it's a loaded question too, because it doesn't necessarily matter if there's a treatment. It matters if a person's willing to accept the treatment. So, I mean, again, like, look at alcoholism, right? So, like, people, there's rehab centers, there's AA, there's lots of stuff out there, but the program won't work unless they do the work. So an alcoholic has to want to get sober in order to not have a problem with alcohol anymore, to be an active alcoholic. So with a narcissist or a psycho, like, if there is treatment for it, they would actually have to really want that treatment. But if a person, like an alcoholic, like anybody else, they have to experience enough pain from their behavior to actually be motivated to change. That's why it's so important to let an addict or an alcoholic hit rock bottom. That's why it doesn't help. It doesn't help to call in to work for them or to somehow ease the pain of the natural consequences of their behavior. because they need to get a DUI, they need to go sit in jail, they need to lose their job, they need to lose their spouse. Like, these things need to happen for them to have that wake-up call that what they're doing is not working. And and of course that's really hard to do, right? When you're watching a loved one implode like that. But if you really loved them, it's like, if you really love somebody, like, you've got, enabling them isn't helping, it's hurting. It doesn't feel like hurting, it feels like helping, but it's hurting. So with narcissists, if a person doesn't experience pain from their actions, if they feel entitled and justified, they're not experiencing pain from it. So even if there was a treatment, the odds of them actually wanting to sincerely work it would be very, very small. I have come across a few, hold on a second here, a few people that have emailed me from time to time saying that they identify as being a narcissist, and that they did want help, that they did want treatment. And so even if that is sincere, my whole thing is, if you want it, like, the problem with narcissists isn't that they're narcissists. It's that they don't want to change. Like, if you see problematic behavior in yourself and you're motivated to change it, then change. Like, it's, like, you take steps and move in that direction. I think a lot of people, they have this label, they get that label. Maybe, I don't know where they got maybe they even got a diagnosis of being a narcissist. But again, like, this stuff, these are labels. Like, this isn't like a hard science. And so, like, just because somebody else, like, don't ever let anybody define you, I guess is what I'm saying. So even if somebody else says, like, especially don't ever let anybody say that you're incapable of change, right? Like, maybe you are, maybe you're not, but you need to be the one to determine that. I think when people talk about narcissists and, those kinds of people not being able to change, I think they kind of need to give some context to that, because if a person doesn't see that they have a problem, they're a million miles away from wanting to change, let alone being able to actually do the work of changing. That's why people talk about narcissists they don't change. It's because there's no introspection there. They're so far away from even wanting to connect to their authentic self. They have so many different defense mechanisms up that it's not there. So, yeah, people have, and again, like, even if they came up with a treatment that involved them taking a shot every day, and that was it. There was no therapy, there was nothing else. They just took this shot every single day that helped give them empathy. A person still has to want to do that, even though it's a shot, right? Or a pill. And as a nurse, I have seen, it is so wild to me. And I get it. And there's no judgment there on my end. I get it. It's frustrating for me, though, when I see people diabetics in particular, who the pain is great. Like, if they don't take their insulin, they can die. Like, you're talking ultimate pain. And yet there's so many, I've worked with so many patients where, knowing that, like, this isn't, you might die. It's you will, like, your body's going to shut down. You're going to have, you can't not take it. And the denial can be so strong, and the resistance can be so strong, because they're not experiencing so much pain in that moment, that the pain of even getting a shot is greater than the pain of, like, risking their health. And so what ends up happening is then slowly over time, they start having health issues. They get a toe amputated, then a few toes, and then a foot, and then both feet. And then they just keep losing body parts until they die. And, or they go into like, they end up getting the flu, which progresses to like pneumonia. And then they start having just massive organ failure. And it's so, again, like even if there is treatment, a person has to actually want to utilize that treatment. And most people don't unless they're experiencing enough pain on a regular basis. It's incredibly tragic. So, but I'm glad you brought that up there real quick, because I think a lot of people, my one of my big concerns with this topic is, people wanting to hold, again, I get it, people wanting to hold on to hope that this person can change, other people feeding into that false hope, exploiting that false hope, saying that, and maybe it's even legit, like saying that they have some sort of treatment program, right? And then potentially just scamming them out of a ton of time and money and energy, or a person thinking that going into emotional collapse, thinking, oh no, I left too soon. Had I continued to hang on, then that miracle would have happened and that this person really would have changed. And then being absolutely devastated with guilt and shame and regret, thinking that they gave up right before that miracle happened. So I think it's really important that people understand like the full context of, just because there might be a treatment someday doesn't mean that that person's actually going to utilize it. So, okay, I like this one. Okay, so here's another point in the book. He calls it the detective rule. If you find yourself playing detective with someone, you should remove them from your life immediately. Like, boom, like drops mic, right? Like it's just that simple. Like if you don't trust the person that you're with, you need to not be with that person, because there's no relationship there. A relationship's based on, honesty and trust and being treated with dignity and respect. And really, if those 4 foundational elements are not there, then there's no relationship. It's a manipulationship. Like that, like that's it. That's it. Like there's no other way around that. Like, honesty, trust, dignity, respect. Those are 4 elements. It's sort of like baking a cake, right? Like you have flour, sugar, eggs, water. Like if you're missing any of those elements, it's not a cake. It's a lump of dough. That's it. And if you're missing all of those elements, then it's just nothing. Like there's nothing there. So I love the playing detective rule. Don't do it. It's a sign you gotta go. He calls it the psychopath breakup checklist. Covertly sprinkle hints that they covertly sprinkle hints that they are interested in someone else. They repeat step 1 until you finally react. They calmly imply that you are being oversensitive and jealous. They give you the silent treatment for being sensitive and jealous. Repeat step 4 until you start to self-destruct. They use your self-destruction to convince the new target that you're crazy, and that the way the new target doesn't feel, and in that way, the new target doesn't feel like their cheating is wrong. You use your self-destruction to convince their friends that you're crazy. That way, they have full support from their fan club when they replace you. They begin to patronize you and explain how much your unstable behavior is hurting them. They choose the most insensitive way imaginable to dump you. They wave the new target in your face to show you how happy they are without you. When the breakup occurs, it will be so casual on their end, but you will feel nothing but emptiness, like your spirit has died. Triangulation again. Their favorite time to triangulate is right after the breakup. They are waiting for your reaction. If you don't react, they will invent a reason to talk to you, making sure that their latest profile picture is displayed front and center. They may request an article of clothing or something obscure. After the breakup, they will minimize everything that has happened, warning you to not create any drama. They will be full of shallow, pseudo-pleasantry, talking down to you, which of course provokes a reaction. All the while, they expect you to be pleasant and polite to them, or you will be labeled as bitter and jealous. They've moved on with their new target, making you wonder if perhaps they really are capable of love and capable of an amazing relationship. They will gleefully parade their latest victim to the world in order to evoke jealousy and drama, which is already a sign that they haven't magically grown a conscience. Yes, underline that too, right? So normal, healthy people don't go around destroying others, and they don't move on at light speed, and they don't parade their new target around. None of that's normal behavior. And this is totally a sign. If they're triangulating and doing all of this, they haven't magically grown a conscience. This is all smoke and mirrors. As their new relationship unfolds, you'll start to notice every little detail about the idealization of this new person. Things you always wished for but never received. Perhaps they moved in with them right away or married them when they would not move in with you or marry you. Maybe they are posting pictures all over Facebook of them together, but they never wanted to post pictures of the two of you together. Basically, it feels like you are a bothersome speed bump along their way to their true fantasy or their ideal life. And here's the difficult thing to understand. Someone else was feeling the exact same way at the beginning of your relationship. That's really weird, like wild to really wrap your mind around, that our idealized phase with them was part of somebody else's discard phase. And once you see that, once you start putting the pieces together with that, it's, oh man, it's intense. The good thing about that is that validation that it's not you. It's not you. This is why going no contact is so important, because as you obsess over them and their new relationship, it will only make you feel worse. And you'll wonder why this new relationship is lasting longer than yours did. You will feel inferior and inadequate, and their actions are designed to make you feel this way. And if you end the relationship, prepare yourself for the psycho to potentially stalk and harass you for months or years. This is because they've lost power and control over the situation and over you. If you were discarded by them and they aren't making an effort to reopen contact, consider yourself lucky, even though that feels hard to do because you feel so low. Inferiority and comparison. Infidelity leaves long-lasting insecurities and feelings of not being good enough. This can take years to get over. And frankly, if you stay with that person, I don't think people ever do get over that. Now compare this to a psychopath's triangulation. Not only do they cheat on you, they happily wave it in your face. They carry none of the usual shame and guilt that comes with cheating, and this can be even more damaging and traumatizing. Their behavior doesn't make sense, and so you try to make sense of it by projecting a normal human conscience onto them in an attempt to explain away their unexplainable behavior. But once you start discovering psychopathy, sociopathy, or narcissism, everything starts to change and make sense. You are horrified that you let this darkness into your life. All of their accidental or insensitive behavior finally makes sense. You try to explain this to friends and family, but no one seems to get it. This is why being validated matters, because you discover you aren't crazy. You end up having to let go of your past, you have to let go of your past understanding of human nature, rebuilding it back up from scratch. You realize that people are not always inherently good. You begin to feel paranoid, hypervigilant, and anxious. After the discard, Most survivors end up feeling a kind of emptiness that cannot even be described as depression. It's like your spirit has completely gone away. You feel numb to everything. You worry that your encounter with this monster has destroyed your ability to empathize, to feel, and to care. But rest assured, your spirit is still there. Wounded, but still there. As you begin to discover self-respect and boundaries, it slowly starts to find its voice again. Ultimately, you will leave this experience with an unexpected wisdom about the people around you. Your spirit will return stronger than ever before, refusing to be treated that way again. You may encounter toxic people throughout your life, but you won't let them stay for very long. You will see mind games and manipulations for what they are. You will seek out kind, honest, and compassionate individuals. You deserve nothing less. This newfound strength is the greatest gift of the psychopathic experience, and it is worth every second of the recovery process because it will serve you for the rest of your life. I love that. I love that. So that's what I have from the book. And I hope that that was helpful. Those notes, those are on my website, thriveafterabuse.com under book club. And it's a great book. If you haven't read it before, I highly recommend it. It's just such a good book. Wise Tech says, we just need a fast forward button to get there fast. I hear ya. I know that the journey of healing from all of this, it can, like the feeling of like, I wanted this yesterday, right? But it really is. It is so worth it. And you really do learn so much about yourself. You rediscover who you are. And it's not even just like, oh, okay, now I know who I am. It's your life will begin to work. I mean, it's just everything across the board. People start to re-examine, what profession am I in? Is this for me? What kind of friendships am I in? What kind of hobbies am I in? What shape am I in? What about my physical health, my emotional health, my relationship health, my financial health? Like, you start really you just get bare naked with yourself, and you just start from ground zero, and you start examining every single thing that you bring into your existence. Everything. It's powerful, powerful, powerful stuff. And that's something that you can do now. Like that's an action step that will keep you busy. Like that's a good use of time and energy, is to really start examining, who am I? Like what are my thoughts, and how much of this came from the narcissist in my life, or from my parents, or from religion, or from gender expectations, or from society, or from movies, or from just outdated cultural messages. What do I believe? What do I think? What do I want? I think so many people live this life of default, of expectation, of obligation, and not realizing that they're not happy. It was, this kind of mindset of, that's a luxury. Like happiness is a luxury. It's you get a job because it makes money, and it doesn't matter if you like it or not. Like you just get a job, you work your butt off, and you make as much as you possibly can because that's just what you do. Especially my grandparents were immigrants. And so that was very much instilled in my father and in turn, I think in me, where it was very much like, this is just what you do. And there is like, like if you don't work 80 hours a week, you're a bum. Like that was very much the message that I got. And, that there were certain jobs that women did, in certain jobs that men did, and you just didn't do anything different. There were certain expectations within a relationship for women's roles and men's roles, and just all of it, right? Just all of these expectations. And when your life is blown to pieces like that, like that's the benefit, is you can start rebuilding by picking up these pieces one at a time and saying, okay, like, I don't know, like, do I subscribe? Like, what do I think about this piece, right? Like, you're rebuilding the house, your temple, like your body, your life is your temple, right? Like, you're rebuilding this, and okay, is this something that I subscribe to? Like, do I really think that, a guy needs to work 80 hours a week to provide for his family? You're like, no, like, no. Does a woman need to be, is it okay for, within every family is different, right? But, is it okay for a woman to be an entrepreneur? Or is it okay for a man to want to be an artist or a chef or an actor, or kind of, step outside of the norm for whatever the expectations might be? So, just all of it, just examining all of it, all of it is powerful, powerful, powerful stuff. Yes, Elise says, unhappiness has been equated with depression. Happiness is earned, but we get brainwashed today to think it just comes to us. I would agree. Here's kind of just an interesting aside. So I haven't had a TV in, I don't even know, 7-8 years now. And so I haven't watched a lot of TV because I don't have one. So I realized probably about 5-6 months ago, I'm like, I really need a break from this. I'm so interested in this topic that this is all I think about. This is all I read. This is all I watch on YouTube. Like, this is just my world. And I need a break, like every now and again, to just not think about this stuff and do something different. And so I've begun watching these different shows. Like, Game of Thrones, like I got obsessed with that. And then it was Westworld, and then it was Black Mirror, and kind of all of these like dystopian type shows. And although I guess Game of Thrones wouldn't even be considered dystopian, that's, if anything, that's more like Shakespearean, really interesting. But anyways, what I liked about those shows is that there's such a contrast to the shows that were on TV 7 or 8 years ago, like when I stopped watching TV. Because like when I stopped watching TV, all of the shows tended to have a happy ending. Everything kind of always worked out. They were like these little sitcom things where everything was workable behavior. Nothing was deal breaker behavior. Everything just worked out. And in these shows, it was very much the opposite. It's like, no, actually, life's not fair. Life's not right. Like, it just is. And it showed, I think, also like a lot of the darkness of humanity. And in a way, I like that, because it shows, it's a more accurate, I mean, like, I'm so glad we don't live in like the Game of Thrones world, right? But it shows a different side of personality and like perspective and just people. So in that sense, I'm glad, because it's just more, it shows like really rotten people. And I think that's important for people to realize, like, yeah, they really are out there. Because yeah, people do so much. There is, I think, a lot of like raw kind of stuff out there when it comes to happiness, and this idea of like, you can do it, like you can put whatever, if you want it bad enough, like you can make it happen. There's some truth to that, but I think that the climb and all of it's not talked about. And so people don't have, like accurate expectations for things. You know, like the way that they think things will be versus the way things are two very, very, very different things. And that's a big problem, and it sets people up to fail. Because people have this idea of like what marriage is like, or what having a child is like, or what graduating from college, like, my God, graduating from college, it's this idea of like, oh, you've got a golden ticket, right? Like you've got this college diploma and now all these doors open for you. Or even the thought of that with high school. And like, that's not the case. And I could go on and on. Like, it's just, it's the reality versus the lie the fantasy that we're all sold. It's a huge wake-up call. So Nicole says, thank you so much, Dana, and everyone here tonight. I could not have escaped without you. We are warriors and survivors. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. I agree completely. So, yeah, Mary says, sometimes we need some mindless drivel to distract or entertain us. Completely. I'm a huge fan of, like, it can be really hard to continue and exhausting to try to continually make yourself feel better. If you're feeling your world's blown apart, like it's, that's hard to like just put down. Like I've been there. I get that. And it can be really intense to just carry that around all the time. I find what it really does help to think about like what can change your mood, music, and something that's effortless, something that you don't have to force yourself to do, something that doesn't require a lot of effort. Pushing play is like all the effort required. A movie can do that for a person. A book, reading a good book, listening to music can really do wonders for just giving your brain a break from all of the heaviness in this and just being able to just lose yourself in a different world. And it helps. I think it really, really does help to just calm a person down, because then it helps to relieve that like obsessiveness when you're trying to just make sense of all of this and you're trying to put the pieces of your life back together at the same time. It's intense. But yes, I agree. MC Wemsey? MC Wemseyful, that's cute, says, I think we need to use TV for positive role modeling and education. Imagine the power of visioning a happier way of living. Totally. And so that's like, okay, that's one of the things that's so cool, right? Like we live in this day and time where, forget TV, like TV, frankly, like, does anybody really, I mean, people like binge on Netflix, but like, most people don't even watch TV anymore. It's YouTube and it's Netflix and it's stuff like that. What's cool is it's the internet and platforms like YouTube and Amazon's coming out with their own video platform here, and Vimeo and places like Facebook. People can make their own videos and release their own content. And that's what's like such a game changer, is you don't have to have this like huge production cost to putting together these videos and putting out this positivity and these messages. And that's what I love, like, because we all have the power to impact like massive change. So, and that's, what we're doing. Like we're opening these conversations up and creating topics like this. It's exciting. It's exciting to think where all of this will be in the next, really probably like 5 years. I think it's going to happen fast. Though it's so easy now for anybody to create a video, to get it out there, and to be able to reach a lot of people, and people share stuff on the internet. Like it's so cool. Like I just am so excited by it. So Diana says, these live streams are such a lifesaver when it comes to loneliness. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. You know, here's the other benefit to this, okay, is with the support groups, you know, over time, like once you get to know people, it's always important to have, you know, trust is always earned, kind of a thing. So kind of just going slow and in getting to know people. But I think most people find that when they get into a support group and they really get to know different, you know, of course, different people are going to resonate with you differently, right? But there's a lot, we all tend to have very similar, I think, personality types. And that was another big, huge thing, wake up call for me was, where have all of you guys been? Like my whole life. Like I just kept coming across all of these these hurtful, manipulative, difficult people. And then yet I get into the support group and it's like all of these people that are super, you know, hippie woo woo and, you know, just compassionate and kind and caring and reaching out to other people and in like what was weird, like interested in a lot of the same stuff that I was interested in that most people I don't think are interested in, and it just weird. So that's kind of the upside to it, is that, you know, it's like like there's just this gathering of a lot of like really good people out there, and that I don't know if people would really find any other way. So, yes, Connecting the Dots says, I have to go. It's so late. Yawn. Me too. Even reading the word yawn just made me yawn. That's weird. Oh, I'm so excited. Let's see. Yes, I'm so glad that for those of you that are out, that you were able to get out. You know, and it's just remembering, like, you know, you matter. You matter. You matter. You matter. You matter. You matter. You matter so flipping much. Like it just, like you matter. And everybody has their own unique gifts. And that's, what is that saying? It's something like the two most important days in a person's life is the day you're born and then the day you figure out why. And it's, that comes from knowing yourself and knowing like what makes you uniquely you. You know, what are your superpowers? Like what are your unique gifts? And I would strongly encourage you guys to do some soul searching about that. You know, what are you good at, and what are you about, and what do you believe in, and you know, what are some things, like what are some things about you that are just uniquely you? So, and I think, you know, when you're on the right path, when you know that you're on the right path, is it's when the path pulls you to it. There was an exercise I did a while ago when because like I said, I was reading all of these different like self-help books and trying to explore like why am I struggling so much with trying to figure out what I want to do with my life, and I just felt so lost, and I was going through like career after career after like my career choices were all over the board, and I didn't have a solid sense of self, and I just kept looking and looking, and the exercise was to write down everything that you think that you would want to be, like as a profession. But you could even extend this exercise to obviously like different areas, right? Like kind of the path that you want your life to be on. And then to go through and read them out loud. And when you get to the one that and to sit there and you think about it, right? When you get to the one that brings tears to your eyes, that's the one that you follow. So I thought that was really like a really good exercise. A lot of people, so like a lot of people do like they really change a lot of things in their life. Like this is can be such a big wake up call for them to where they're like, you know what am I doing? Like somehow I got into financial planning and I don't care about this at all. Like man, you know what really makes my, like thinking about it, like what makes your heart sing? Like what just juices you? And people oftentimes they'll be like, you know what, I really strongly feel compelled to, you know, work with children, or to teach emotional health. Like I want to really teach emotional health to children, or I really want to write about this topic, or what, like you know based on based on how you feel, and it's that feeling of, I get goosebumps. That's my signal that I am aware of. If I'm really on track with something, I get goosebumps, and that to me is a sign that I need to follow that, because it's just that overwhelming flood of intense emotion. So Lori says, such good advice. I don't even like my job. There's so much meanness in it, and this experience makes me only want to be around truth, love, and kindness. Yes, yes. Annie says, what if I really what if what if I really want to do is to be a dominatrix and get even? Is that bad? It's I would encourage you to do something that you're taking action from a place of love and joy instead of anger and hurt in anything that you do. So, because taking action out of anger and hurt is, it's not your unique gift. Like your unique gift, I really do believe, like for me, I believe the purpose of life is to grow. If you think about it, like that's just kind of like what everything else does, right? Like it's growth. And so we only grow when we start cultivating these gifts inside of us. And I think we only become the fullest expression of ourselves when we're allowing ourselves to expand and to be creative and to just follow what makes us feel most alive, and ideally like in a positive direction. So yeah, totally. Lucy says, I found when she was in business, I could get goosebumps from counseling others on their dreams. You can do that in any job. Encourage others. Totally. Yeah, like you might be, let's say you're in business now, or like you're a financial planner now, and you're like, you know what? I'm interested in this, but it doesn't juice me. You might think, like thinking about different ways that you can do that. Like what does excite you? Maybe it excites you to help people, to give financial advice and helping people to buy their first home, or to help women or men, people that are recovering from abusive relationships, coaching them about financial planning, right? And how to get their credit back on track, how to get their life back in order. Or maybe it's being, generally, I think for most people, it's whatever your unique gift is, the highest expression of it is using it to really help others to some extent, whatever that might mean for you. So you'll know when you get there based on how you feel. Shay says, it's helping me so much to see kindness and compassion here. Totally. I agree. It's awesome. It's our little corner of the internet. Like, I just love it. I just love it. So, yes. Oh my gosh, that's right. People are talking about having a happy new year. Yes. So, I'll have to do a video here in the near future about New Year's because I think that is definitely a time for some reflection and setting a positive intention of what we're going to steer instead of the year or life in general happen to us. I think let's be more proactive and decide what we're going to make it. So I think it would be really fun to have a live stream about that and about the new year and how we can use everything that's painful. We can become like emotional alchemists and take all of that energy, that intensity of what's happened to everybody in the past year or 5 years or whatever this is, and use it towards our highest and greatest good, and then ideally towards the highest and greatest good of others, because that's when the magic really starts to happen. So we'll do that soon. So I'm gonna sign off. And Amethyst, okay, says, tonight is the first night I watched you and listened to you, as I usually chat and miss so much of what you're saying. It's like you were talking just to me tonight. Thank you, Dana. You are awesome. You are so very welcome. And thank you all for being here and for participating in just everything, like all of it. It's just really, really cool. And I'm so glad that we can have all of this. And you know, you guys, you matter. Like, you matter so much, and the world needs you. The world needs you to find your unique gift, to find who you are, and to come alive. And so, with that said, like, you are not alone. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So, hugs, and I will see you guys. I'll do a live stream here in the near future about the new year. Okay? Take care. I'll see you next week. Bye.